progress. Okay. All right, here we are. Welcome. In the daylight. Okay, so today I'm excited to be here with you. This is a fun one. This lecture has been got revamped with COVID, clearly, as assist, as you know, could adapt it as best we can to the reality of what's happening with not being able to do hands-on assists, unfortunately. But someday when we can, we will do a giant workshop. We'll have multiple ones probably just for everyone who's been through teacher training at this time. So you can come back and like actually learn how to do this. So I'm like, I'm ready. When that day comes, I cannot wait to be like, yes, hands-on again. So so know that that's still available to you at some point on the road, whenever we're allowed and feel comfortable doing that. So what we'll do today is we will go over, we'll discuss like the theory of it, what we look for in assist anyway, and then how we're doing assists now with COVID. Like, what does that look like? How does it look like with verbal cues, with demoing, with a lot of directional things? And there's a variety of different ways you can still do it. And even having people do self-assist. Like you may have seen today, Brenda's teaching that self-assist workshop today, right? That like, oh, it's kind of ironic too. I was like, oh, should have had you all just go do that for a little while. And so we'll talk about all those sort of things today. And my plan and how I like to do this is that we put it all together by having you really implement it and practice this with one another. So you're going to be practice teaching today. So if yesterday didn't go well, you can redeem yourself today. Just kidding. Regardless, you're going to have fun with it. So we'll be doing a lot of practice teaching with specific things in mind for it. And we'll also be talking about how do you teach on Zoom? What does that look like when you're teaching online? Just some tips and tricks that we've learned along the way that kind of help make things a little bit easier and smoother for you and your students when you're teaching, because the reality is it's not going away anytime soon. Zoom is here to stay, I think, for a while, or whatever, Google Meets, whatever version of online teaching that you choose to use, that's not going anywhere. Okay. So with that, how's everybody doing? How are you feeling? Feeling okay today? Yeah, ish, all right. This is our last stretch of the day. So yeah, so okay, so what we'll do to begin, so since some of you are in person, you all have been like kind of close to each other, right? You're okay with that? Like ish, close-ish? Okay, so let's make a little circle real quickly just for this first part, just because we can. So it doesn't matter with your mats. So you don't need to pull your mats around. It's just gonna be a couple minutes. If you need something to sit on, grab it, but just make like a little, so that you can be, you know, like this close to each other. Friends at home, you'll be doing this. You'll be doing this pretending there's someone next to you. You'll still get something out of it as well. I promise, those of you at home. I'm not sure. You all got to come in closer.
Will's the back edge.
Yeah, Will can be the back edge for sure. There we go. See, look at this tight little bunch here. So cute. Okay. Okay. All right. Hands together. Sit up tall. Close your eyes. And just take a couple deep breaths. Just tune in a little bit here. Letting your belly settle from eating and just tuning in to shift and switch gears to the concept and idea of assist. What does that mean to you to receive assists in any form or fashion, whether it's physical hands-on assists, guided words, gestures? What is it like to receive? And what does it feel like when you give help, when you assist somebody else? Now from here, start to rub your hands together. Get your hands nice and warm. Build some heat. Okay, and then pause here. And then friends at home, I want you to just start to pull your hands out away from one another. And everyone in here too, let's do that just a little bit. Like pull them out just a few inches, your hands away. You can keep your eyes closed. Pull them out a couple more inches. Can you breathe into that space between your hands? And bring your hands slowly back towards one another again. And then pull them back out a little bit. Find a little rhythm, a little pulsation of in and out with your hands. Keep breathing. Watch your breath. Find Ujjayi breath with this. So bring your hands back together again. Rub your hands again. Warm them up. And friends in studio, you'll open your eyes and you're going to turn your palms out away from you and bring them close to your neighbors. Don't let them touch, but get them close. Friends at home, let's start to pull your hands away from one another a little bit. Breathe. Good, steady. Pulling them out a little bit more, friends at home. Friends in studio, start to pull your hands towards you a little bit. Draw them in towards you slightly. And then take them back out again. If you're worried about touching, you can keep your eyes open. Again, draw your arms towards you. Friends at home, play around with that, pulling it in and out again. Breathe. Good. Then everyone, bring your hands back together to heart center. Close your eyes. Rub your hands together again. Warm them up one more time. And then from here, pause, pull them apart a little bit, and then slowly connect to your breath and start to let your hands walk or slide out away from one another to a point where you right before you stop noticing anything between the hands. You might have to take it to a point where you're like, oh, lost it, and then draw it back in a little bit so you find it. Take a big breath in here. Big breath out. Now open your eyes and notice what that is. Look around the room and notice where that is for everybody. What that space is, the difference for everyone. It's a little different. Yeah. Good. And then from here, bring your hands in. Thanks, everybody. Bow forward. Ha-ha. How'd that feel? Feel all right? At home? How was it at home? What did you feel at home? What did you experience?
It was just like comforting, warm and comforting.
Yeah. And here, what did you notice?
Indirect push and pull.
A push and pull? Of what?
Energy.
Energy? Yeah.
Doing it as a group. Like
Talk louder so they
yeah,
can
sorry. When we were doing it as a group, as the hands would get closer, you could feel like I felt heat, a lot of heat in my palms building up without any even being close to like actually contacting. Then as it pulled away, it would back down just a little bit. But yeah, it just ebbed and flowed as we breathed and then as we moved our hands too.
I could very clearly visualize it's just like whoa.
Yeah.
I felt like my hands were pressing into, like they still feel as though I'm in like tabletop pressing. It's like there's solid
Yeah.
against it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very cool.
Mhm.
Our energy share, I felt connected all the way back to myself.
Mhm.
That's cool.
Yeah. 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 It's so this is the power of touch, y'all. You didn't even touch each other. And this right here, and like, if anything, like to take away from this is that like even our presence, like we all have, like for me, when I like, maybe because I've been doing this a long time, but like like I can feel it here. And like, we all have our own personal bubble, we all talk about that, like your bubble, so that when we're moving into our student spaces, to keep that in mind, like we are bringing our prana, our energy, we're bringing that into their spaces when we move around the room. So whether we get to actually put our hands on somebody or we're coming over to them, that is so important that we stay mindful, we stay intentional, we stay present. We really take care of ourselves from the inside out so that we can step into that space. Also, the power that we have just for ourselves, like doing this just yourself, like you felt it, right? You didn't need somebody else, which was nice. It was good to feel connected with everybody. But even for yourself, you have that power, to do this and to be like, okay, I got this hurts, when something hurts, what do? We go like this, right? You're like, it hurts, my heart hurt. Like we touch, we bring touch. So we find our ways now, since we can't do hands-on assists right now, we find ways to do that without putting our hands on people, to use our words, to point, to demo, to do these different things to help people find that for themselves and as a group together, whether you're on Zoom, in an online forum at home or in a space together. Isn't that exciting? I don't know. I get all like woo about it. It's so fun. It's so fun. Okay, so with that being said, now you all can go back to your seats. You're good. Unless you like really want to stay in a circle, that's fine. If you're comfortable, it's totally up to you. I don't care. I'm not attached. I'm like, take me up on it, whatever I say. I'm not attached to a shape. Okay. So what I do, what I want to, we're going to go over that handout that I posted in Google Classroom the other day. So we'll go over that in a little bit. But one of the things that I want to really be, that we're aware of when we're doing assist in any kind of fashion, is that all of this, that when we're trying to communicate to our students in our class, this is an educational component. So whatever we're doing, whether we're putting our hand on someone, we're trying to get them to understand or teach them or show them something, have them feel something, be aware of it, or our words are helping to give them some sort of educational piece, right? You all did assist, even yesterday, like extended and intensive. We did not assist, the prop work, right? Those were also, it's the same thing. That's an educational opportunities for your students to feel something, experience the pose in a little bit of a different kind of a way, okay? So all of that is going to be under the guise of like, this is education for our students, okay? I also want us to be aware of that at some point when you can actually do hands-on assist, but this also is, we do want to stay mindful in even when we're not touching and in this space of like getting into somebody's space and pointing or helping or whatever that might be. And why I think assists are so important when we can actually do them is our society, especially our Western society, takes a look at touch in unfortunately two ways. We've got violence and sex. And it's very hard to find that middle in between loving kindness route. And so yoga can be that opportunity when we do provide hands-on assist where people maybe get touched for the first time in who knows how long, because some people may not ever get any kind of kind, pleasant touch. And that we get to be an opportunity to help people, whether it's working through trauma or like someone actually just being loving and kind towards them. So that comes along with our words as well as touch when that can happen. So I feel very strongly about that. We also, of course, have to be mindful of trauma. If someone is coming in with trauma and they don't want to be touched, then we need to respect that. We need to honor that. And we cannot take it personally as teachers if somebody does opt out of teaching, because we don't know people's story. We don't know what's going on with them. I will say the tricky thing with assist in the yoga community, there's been a lot of back and forth about are assists even necessary anymore? Are physical assists even worth doing? Because there have been abuse with assists. I mean, it's just, you could Google it and you can read up all about it. Teachers who have abused with their students in whatever kind of form that can look like. There is that reality. There is also the reality that it can trigger trauma for someone, even if they don't know. So even if somebody does opt out of or they opt in because they're like, yeah, I'm fine, they might get assisted. And it triggers trauma they didn't even know, and so just know, so you have to like decide for yourself when it comes down to that point of hands-on touching, that to keep all those things in mind, and it's up for you to just do what's right and feels clear in your heart, and so there's trauma-informed training that you can do for yourself. And I think a lot of it comes with the intention you set in your practice, in your teaching, and being really clear as a teacher of like, why am I doing this for my students? What would be my goal for them with doing this? So this is not to scare you, but it is to just be really, like I've told you from the beginning, I'll always tell you the truth. I will never hide any secrets of yoga, that like, this is what's happening, the talk of assists in yoga world. And it's good for you to know so that you can kind of decide for yourself what's going to resonate and make most sense for you. Yeah. So with that being said, how do you all feel about assist? I feel like I'm Debbie Downer about it, but
I'm so sad that we can't like learn how. I mean, I'm so glad to hear that there's going to be workshops in this time. 'Cause, oh, I've had so many times where an assist is like absolutely has nothing to do with the pose, and like it just, I've cried, like it just is such a healing thing.
yes. Yeah, same.
I'm nervous about the experience of assist, not nervous, I'm hesitant about the experience of assists because of maybe there's a sudden emotion, right?
Yeah.
And not wanting to be prepared.
Yeah.
So that if that happens, I'm prepared and it doesn't just hit me like a wave, because I don't want to accept what I'm not ready to accept.
Yeah.
So I'm hesitant
Yeah.
about assists.
Well, the good thing is you can't do them yet in that way. But it is,
Like I appreciate the importance of them and what can happen, the exchange that can happen.
right.
But I want to be prepared for it.
Yeah. And you do your best. And I feel like a lot of that is the reality is you practice, like I'm always saying to y'all, practice, it really comes down to practice. It comes down to feedback. It comes down to all this anatomy you all are learning. You're learning it for a reason, so that you can apply it to if you are working with someone's body and you're helping them, so you understand the mechanics of what's going on in someone's body, that you learn the subtle body so you understand the actual energetics of it. And we're going to talk about some of that stuff, I think, that might help to be like, oh, these are things that I can be on the lookout for, so I really do stay present, and that I'm not just like randomly doing weird things to someone in class. Yeah.
I guess regarding kind of that outcome of if someone has a very emotional or trauma induced reaction that they're not expecting to have, where do you have any advice or guidelines for determining that point? Like if someone starts crying, that could be, okay, that trauma has come up and I need to give them space, or it could just be this emotion came up, but they still, like, it's not a reason to remove yourself from assistance. Is there any sort of guidelines or advice you have
For that person or just in
Yeah.
general? I mean,
or just in
yeah,
general, that like telling the difference between this is a situation where something came up that I need to remove myself from because I'm impeding on in their personal space, versus this is something that came up, but they're working through it, and me actually being there is at the very least not harming, and at best it's actually helpful in helping them get through it.
I mean, it's really, I would say, case by case. When in doubt, though, go back to the 8 limbs, go back to the yamas and niyamas, think about like, what are we doing? Like being in communication, I think, is just so important with all of that. I'm a big believer of when teaching, that I state the obvious so that if anywhere from like the lights going out to the music going weird to something happening with the internet to if there is a weird reaction with a student that you have, like, you don't shout it out to the class and acknowledge it, but you acknowledge it with that person. So starting the dialogue and you being really clear about your intention as a teacher, I think makes a difference. And of course, people can misread it. I mean, it can happen, but the misreading can happen and mistakes. We're human. So, you know, that can happen, but I would say it's very case by case basis. I would say the reality is men, you got to be careful. I mean, that's just how it goes. Look at the look at the ratio here in the room. I will say in my experience of teaching, as long as I have, I've seen it a lot. I've seen things go wrong with teachers, men teachers sitting in the seat of a teacher, abusing their power, sleeping with all their students. Like, it's gross. And it's why I will tell you all when we get to business of yoga, don't date your students. Like, it's just messy. And especially guys, like, you got to be careful. And like, it's a really interesting thing. And so for the fellas, like, having conversations, like talk to Austin at some point about this, because he's really had to like, I've watched him teach over the years and how it has evolved. Like, I mean, it was hilarious. Like back in the day when we were both at Core Power and he and I were just friends. I mean, his classes would just be packed with all these women like, and I'm like, great. Because I was running the studio. I'm like, sweet, bring them on in. And he had a girlfriend. So it was nothing that I never had to worry about any of those lines. It was like, great, like, but it was always, there was like Austin's class. I'm like, I know. And it would like run the gamut of like 20-year-olds to 50-year-olds. Like, it was just like, it was adorable. And he, but he really has to like, he had to get really clear about boundaries. I mean, that's a lot of what it comes down to is like setting really clear boundaries for yourself. And then, same goes for everybody else. Like, I've seen a lot of female teachers or female identifying teachers they also date students, or it's like this weird, like, they're always like, these students are always hitting on me. And it's like, you've got to be mindful of like, what is your purpose when you come to teach? It's just like something to be really get clear for yourself, because this is such an intimate setting. It is one of those things that, we talk about yoga as transformation, and we do mean it. You've all experienced, you wouldn't be here if you didn't have that. And so you want to be in a space that feels safe, and not knowing, that's scary. If you're like, oh, wait, like, I think it's a safe space, but is the teacher looking at me like that? Do I want the teacher to look at, like, it gets weird. And that's where like, I love this about Cambio, that it's not a hierarchy. It's not a guru based lineage. So we don't have that problem as much. I mean, obviously as individuals, we don't have a policy around dating students or anything like that, but some studios do. Some are very hard lined of like, you will not date your students, period. You'll be fired if you date. Then, and that's what they choose to do. So there's a lot, like, we talked ethics way back, if you remember, that all is part of it. But touch then becomes important too with assist, because you want to be really careful of like, what is your intention? How are you feeling when you step into that space with someone and you put your hands on them? Like, I mean, I've had it before years ago when I was single and there was someone I was like, he's attractive. And I was like, I probably shouldn't. I think he's really hot. I don't know. I was like, I had to like check myself to be like, okay, clear this first before you go in, so that there is no miscommunication, that I want to hold this space sacred for my students. Like, even if I think someone's cute, or even if I'm like, I don't like this person, like that happens too. Like, sorry, we're humans. There might be someone you're like, and you have to like, for whatever reason, right? I mean, I tell you the truth. I tell you the truth. And, you know, and you've got to like check that for yourself of like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? You know, like for me, I'm here of service. And so what does that look like? And I got to get my side of the street clear. You know, we ask our students to check their shit at the door. Same for us. Same thing. We got to do the same thing too. Anyway, sorry, I feel like I'm on soapbox right now about all of that. But yes, I do feel very passionate about it. And, you know, anyway, I feel like I've made my points clear. Okay, what else? How else do you feel about assist? Other than a little nervous and you miss them? Yeah, Bill.
I think like in any of that exchange of knowledge, it creates vulnerability. And so for you to give an assist, you have to be open towards that. And to give the assist, you have to be open to it. So just sitting in that chair. And I think you were touching on that. It can make some people feel uncomfortable or what your intention is with the assist. And what you receive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Milani.
I think too, and I'm sure it's not just coming from the dance world, I'm sure there's other places, but I think the really cool thing, and I think something I personally will struggle with, is the difference between in dance, I would say 90% of the time an assist is because you are doing this wrong and I'm gonna fix you. Versus in yoga, it often can be like, hey, this is great, and let's continue working. So that's
Yes. Totally. And that's where I like to, because we'll interchangeably use assist versus adjust. And, you know, when we look at what the definition of assist versus adjust, you know, it's like, I really try to say assist more than adjust, because adjusting can imply that something is wrong and that needs to be fixed. So in my mind, because language is important, you know, and maybe I would say most people probably wouldn't even like think of it like that, but there is that thing of when, you know, like we have, so I don't know if y'all remember, but when we would walk into the room and, you know, we put everybody in child's pose, you probably have learned this in the dialogue, right? That, you know, I'll be walking around with hands on assist. If you don't want to be, you know, touched, opt out, or however, you know. And then I always would say, know that assists don't mean you're doing anything wrong. Assists are here for your safety primarily. And I can see what you can't see. I have a 360 of you and you don't have that. And so that, like that, I mean, and people may hear it or not, but that's me kind of setting the stage of expectations of, you know, what people can expect and why I would come to them with assist. Hey, Jenny, I see you're here, but aren't you an extended? So you got to switch over to extended. You're an intensive group. Okay. Perfect. Let's see. Yeah, so just that I think can help letting people know like why, you know, what it's for, so that they're not doing something wrong. Cool. Okay. Let's see here. So what makes a good assist? Yes.
I feel like very accurate touching or very accurate language.
Yes, accurate touching or language, definitely. Yes. What else? Yes.
Confidence, just that the teacher you feel
Confidence.
like
Yes.
they know what they're talking about, so there's that trust.
Yes. What
I-
else?
I think positive language with it, so that it's a positive experience and not, because even if you've said it at the beginning, it's like now it's more one-on-one. So it becomes a good thing.
Yeah.
And a check-in with whoever you're assisting.
Yes.
Feedback.
Getting feedback. Like, did that work? Who is the best person to ask for feedback if you were to get to adjust in a class? Who would you want to ask feedback from?
Or a teacher.
Yes,
yeah.
a teacher. Guess who's the last to get adjusted by newer teachers?
Like, oh, they know what they're doing.
Because you're scared of us. And nothing will send one of us off more than back in the day when it was like, okay, you know, if you say you're going to walk around the room and adjust everybody, and then you don't adjust the teacher, we are just sitting there like, Well, what am I? Like, I'm practicing. Like, this is our time too. So like, and you will hear it from a teacher. Like if a new, and I get it, it's scary to come adjust me. It's scary to adjust Austin, but like, you will get the best feedback from us because we will tell you the truth because we want you to be good. Like, and that's the thing. So I'm like, if you get to do it, adjust a teacher because they will tell you the truth. A student will be like, thanks, that was nice. That was great. Like the usual, if you're like, that is not helpful to me, you know? But if you are asking for feedback, so how would you, so forget the teacher. So, you know, the teacher will just give you the straight truth, hopefully. Or I'll just be clear, but I would always give you the truth. What about if you didn't have teachers in class and you didn't really know them that well? So like your friends, they would probably tell you the truth. But if they didn't, what kind of questions would you ask someone if you were asking for feedback? Yeah.
What did you notice happened when I asked you to do that or suggested this? What did you notice happen?
Yeah. What did you notice happen? Yeah. Or Heather, go ahead.
Just being very specific, like when I did this, how did that feel?
Yes.
Like, not just ambiguously, like, how was it?
Yes. Don't be ambiguous. Yeah. Mhm.
And if it's in the class, like, is this okay?
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Yes, you can talk to them individually when you're teaching. I say this and laugh because there were a few years ago, we were doing this when we could do the hands-on SIS, and there was someone in teacher training, bless the little soul, was like, I think I was like working with someone and I did this and he's like, oh, you can talk to them? I'm all, yeah, you can. It was like, they didn't realize that you can have like a little quick one-on-one with somebody. You can do that. I do it now. I do it especially now that I can't do hands-on assist. Like, you know, I'll call out names. I'll be like, Austin, drop your shoulder, you know, or whatever. I'll be up to somebody, be like, Megan, turn your toe out a little, you know, like, yeah, you can have those little one-on-ones in class. 100%.
And in some of our posture clinics, we've been exposed to the idea with Rich, I think, of like these assists that you do where you're married in that assist, because you'll do one side of say crescent, but if you're holding that for 3-5 breaths, you can have a dialogue
Yes.
and then come back to the other side of crescent.
Yep. And you can also, like, one of the things to keep in mind is you can be focusing on one person and saying like, maybe you're adjusting them in a warrior two, and you say what you're doing to them. You say it out loud. So the rest of the class gets the benefit. They don't get the actual hands-on assist, but they get the benefit of you're basically like walking through. It's like a recipe. You're like, here's what I'm doing. I'm touching them like this and that, and I'm saying that cue out to the rest of the room. Yeah. Heather.
I've also really enjoyed, like, say you're in Warrior 2 and everyone's facing the same direction. If you choose to like assist someone in the direction everyone's already facing, they can see
Yes.
what you're doing and then same for the opposite
Yes.
side.
Yes. Because they're watching you when you're teaching. Their eyes are on you. You may think, no, they're not. They're in down dog. Nope, they're looking at you.
So wait, do you mean like if you were the person you're assisting were to turn and face everybody?
No, so say like,
My brain is.
Like we're in warrior, pretend this room is set up like normal. And we were in warrior two, right? Say right foot's forward, everybody's facing this way, and say, I adjusted this person so that everyone in the room can see what I'm doing to that
Gotcha.
person.
Okay.
yeah, so
Right?
you're not like
Yeah.
moving or making them an example because everyone's already.
Gotcha.
Yes. Mhm. How about anyone at home? Any thoughts? No, good. Okay. All right. Well, let's look at this list and see what didn't get said of these tenets of assist here. Mhm. We haven't talked about safety. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about 2. So 1 through 4 are a lot of safety. What about 5? What about this one? Breathing. Why is this important?
You're relaxed. So if you walk up to them and you're like gasping for breath, it's like you've got this tension in you. So if you're breathing, it's like you're doing that ocean wave thing, and it's a very relaxing kind of experience.
Yes. Yeah, right.
not only that, but like you're asking them to breathe and use Ujjayi breath as they're doing
Exactly.
vinyasa, and now you're like walking up and standing in the same position practically, and you're not doing it. You're just like,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You want to respect the students' breathing.
Yeah.
That's the-
And how can you know when to give pressure? Because that's the other thing is like, you need to be able, if you're giving pressure on something, you need to know like when's their inhale and exhale happening. And if you can't tell, then you got to breathe and you want to sync your breath up with them anyway. So that's just going to that's one more element to keep them safe, keep them in their practice and in their body so that it's a really clear educational piece for them. That they're like, okay, we're breathing. This is when I do this. And this is when I give some pressure, that sort of thing. Mhm. Yeah. Well, what did you notice when we were all just doing this exercise with the breath? When I told you to Ujjayi breathe, like did you notice anything happen, change?
I don't really know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, but I did. I noticed something. Yeah, Heather, or Laura.
Just kind of felt like the air became thicker, not the air, but when the energy.
Yeah, it got more intense, right? It energized a little bit more. It put some prana into it a little bit more. Mhm. Yeah. Yes. Let's see. 6, pretty clear, appropriate touch. I think we no creepy, weird fingers. No drive-bys, the annoying drive-bys where you're like, what, get off me like that. Like you want to be intentional. I know, I have all the opinions. Yes. Asking who doesn't want to be assisted in class, right? We got to be really clear with that. And then I just am a firm believer, if you say you're going to do it, you need to adjust everybody at least a couple times in the practice. I would, for me, like because the majority of people, when you can do assisting, I mean, I don't know, who knows how it'll be, that whole thing, but let's just pretend that we're back in a world where you can touch. There will only be, I would say in the most of like maybe a class of 40, I had 3 people opt out of assist. Like that's it. So the people that do opt out though, we are paying attention to who that is and we do not forget. Because I have been in classes before when I've had an adjusting intern, which was always so great when we used to have those, that was like going to assist someone who said not to. And I was literally like slow motioning, like going across. I'm like, oh my, don't touch them, that sort of thing. So we got to be really careful if they opt out. And then if we opt in, then make sure we get everybody. So with that being said, what I would do, and this is basically kind of how this is translated now. So when I kind of give specific cues to people or use people's names, that I make sure I use everybody's names in class as best that I can. And so when you're doing assists, like pick a pattern in the room. So you can either be like, and this will often depend on how everybody is set up in the room. Like especially like Austin Bluffs, the big studio upstairs, like that one could get like real, when classes were packed and you were just like kind of stuck in places, I would be like, okay, I'm gonna get these 4 people, I'm gonna get these 4 people, or sometimes you could like go up the front row, then middle, back, or you can snake up and down, but like have a pattern so that even in a big room, like when that room was packed, by the end of Sun B, I had touched everybody. You're moving, you're working, you're just getting to everyone. There's also ways where you can really spend a lot of time with one person at a time. Like Garrett is really good at that, where he would just like be with someone, stay with them and really assist them through a couple poses. And you can do stuff like that too. So you have options, but you got to work it out so that you get to everybody, if you can.
if you're doing that, is that something you should typically wait until it's maybe someone who's come to your class a couple of times versus someone who's brand new?
Yeah, I would not do that to a new person. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. That's how you monitor. Yeah. yeah, I would definitely only do that with someone that I felt, for me personally, because I wouldn't want someone new to feel like they're being picked on. They'd be like, I don't know, like, what are you doing? Like, you got to be careful to not make a newbie feel like they're being picked on. So it's like that fine balance of what it's going to come back to is number one on that list of safety first. So you have to keep yourself safe and your students safe. Those are two things that are happening, so that you're always like scanning. So you're kind of like, I feel my best analogy is like moms. They just always know what's going on, like in a room, like this is how you are. Like when you're teaching, you've got your eye on what everybody's doing. And so you're like, oh, that they could hurt themselves and what they're doing. I'm going to go address that immediately. So safety is first, 100%, and keeping them safe in what they're doing. And that can happen like, in like the vinyasas, sometimes you can see people do some really wonky things and like up dog or chaturanga or warrior two at first, that lunge stance, you want to address those things. But you also need to stay safe too. So this is where probably why I get so finicky about when I'm teaching, that I want the room like in a nice orderly fashion. One, I think it just energetically helps energy flow through the space nicer for everybody. But you also just want to make sure that it's safe. So if I'm walking through, I can be safe, and that it's not like this weird thing. And it's like, well, I couldn't adjust people because the mats are set up all weird. I'm just being mindful, like glasses, people love to put their glasses on the floor. I don't know why. I'm like, you want me to break your glasses? Like, I don't. So I usually, when that happens, I will set them up on a shelf and just be like, let's just put them here so that I don't smash them, because I probably will. Because that's just like Murphy's Law. I think if you put something like that on the ground, it's going to get smushed.
I feel like it's, and I don't know, maybe it's one, we haven't had a sis for so long, but like getting to everyone seems impossible. I don't know. I guess maybe it's like, oh, I haven't seen it, so I forgot.
You haven't seen, yeah, I think it's just because you haven't seen it. But like, I mean, it starts right off the bat with like, if they go to child's pose, I can get 2 to 3 people in child's pose. And that's just boom, boom, get them just like that.
And on that thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've seen some instructors where maybe they don't get to everybody in class, but then you can do some really cool assists and shavasana. And maybe that's more of a gifting to a new student as opposed to like an assist in a pose.
Yeah. Yeah.
That brings up a moment that I looked for when we were able to get hypnosis. The only time I had one was when I was into the studio, it was in Shavasana, and it was like the best experience ever.
Yeah.
Like a whole like shoulder and arm massage, and I was just
I know. I'm like, I miss those so much. I miss receiving and giving those. Like, yeah. Bryce doesn't have it.
I guess the question I have in particular, like when we're talking about being able to get to everyone by the end of Sun B, obviously with experience, you can tailor those more to it, like for sure looking at the person and figuring out what exactly to adjust. But is it wise to maybe pick something specific, like today I'm going to focus on people's arm position or people's hips and just do it? Or is it really just a practice of trying to be like, I look right away and I know what I need to fix, do it and then move on?
Yeah. I mean, this is where it comes back to, okay, what do you learn when you're all teaching? How do you give cues?
Ground up.
Ground up. So when I'm scanning, ground up. When I mean, I'm just like, it's like I see you as people, but it's more as I see you as little like meat sacks of energy. And I'm just like, how can I make you feel better? How can I make this alignment nicer for you? How can I like make this experience better? And I love to get that in at least once. I mean, there are just meat suits. That's what we got. We're just all meat. I know, gross. From the vegan. From the vegan. We're divine meat suits. Yes. Some of you are gluten free. But really, it's like I'm looking at energy. That's why, like, when we used to like just go in and just assist is always super fun for me as a teacher to just like not teach and just come around and assist. Like when we do yoga retreats, that's what we do there. We take turns. So one person is teaching, the other one is assisting. And it is like, it's so fun because it's like, I'm just like my little radar's like, ooh, okay, how can I, it's just so much fun. And you're just looking like from the ground up always and the whole. So it's like piece by piece and the whole always. It's kind of like you start to just notice that with students. But if you're like, I don't know where to start, my thing is like, I would say, look at hands and feet, like joints. Notice what's happening in the joints of bodies. That's, like, what are their feet doing? What are their knees doing? What are their hips, shoulders, elbows, and hands? Like those, if you kind of keep those in mind, that can be for your cueing, but assists all of it, that like what's happening with there. You can, almost everybody could probably use some sort of tweaking along the line with that. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, anything else on this list? So safety, things to keep in mind too, is just stuff around the room. Your stance is going to be really important. We'll cover kind of some of those things of like some general, and I would just say too, walking around the room, things to keep yourself safe. The safety is a big thing because I've known teachers who have hurt their backs giving assist because they weren't in good alignment. So they hurt themselves because they were like pulling. And I got whiplash one time teaching because I stepped in the sweat puddle and I cut myself and my neck went, and I was like, oh no, this is happening. This is
Check us off on adjustments. You guys check us off on adjustments,
What do you mean?
like when we do our teach out.
Well, you can't. I mean, I guess I don't know your question. You can't do hands-on assist, so.
I mean, like with each other, like when we are teaching out, are you gonna watch for that if we're adjusting our partner?
Well, you won't be touching them.
Oh, okay.
You can't be, because you're not learning that. Yeah, you can't.
So is it just sticking to the cues?
And we're gonna practice this
Instead.
stuff today that I think that this is like how we adapt now. You'll see. It'll make sense in a minute. Yeah, we'll get there. Sorry, I was like, wait, what? Yeah, so, and that means be careful with your approach, that you're present of how you're walking in and out with them. You also, what do you do if someone doesn't seem receptive to an assist? What do you think you would do to that? Let it go. Yeah, just walk away. Be like, okay, like you can try. But if it's like they're not, even if you're like, okay, breathe, and you're like, are you alive in there? Like, I don't know what's happening. And you just have to be like, okay, just let it go. It's probably not you. They might have to poop. Who knows? Honestly, they might be like, I'm about to fart and I'm afraid. Like that can happen, where they just don't, they're just like holding it in. They're like, please, like you don't know. It's probably not you. It's easy to take it personally, but it's like, just think that. You're like, they just farted or they're afraid to fart. Like, I don't know. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, really. And I would say also on that note, if you do get like a bad vibe from someone where something just doesn't feel right, then listen to that. Like, even though I'm like telling you to touch everyone if they say yes, but if you get like a feeling that's not good, like honor that. Like this goes back to keeping yourself safe. And I think this is maybe why I'm so particular about all this, is because I did have that happen to me early on in teaching, which I think is a blessing, because now it's like it made me be so clear of my boundary as a teacher and student early on in my teaching. So I thank that weirdo creep guy for, yeah. So it was in Shavasana, doing the Shavasana, starting with the shoulders. And he was like, you can do that anytime. And I was like, and never again will I touch you. And nope. And so that can happen. And when that happens, you have the choice. And you would always be supported, I'm sure, at any yoga studio. If you're like, I'm getting a creepy vibe, like I will say that as from managing yoga studios and working here, that like always you will be protected by those who are in charge. I believe, and you should be. And if you're not, then I would leave. Don't teach somewhere where someone wouldn't keep you safe when it comes to the mind with something like that. Okay.
Can I bring up, I don't know if there's specific guidance on this, but for example, like if if you took this into a school and everyone is a kid, like, would you just not adjust?
That's probably trickier. I mean, I guess it's like whatever is allowed. Like, I don't know even if you even touch kids in school now? Like, obviously
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, like the rules were so,
It's always been so gray, so gray.
yeah. I think want to be really careful.
I would never assume, like, ask those in charge and get very clear of what policy is.
Yeah.
And with kids is the purpose with yoga, like with grownups, they have more body awareness. So they can tweak and lift and do those things. But with kids, it seems more like engaging in the practice of yoga.
Yeah.
Moving the energy, and it's a little more playful. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think you would need to, but
Yeah, so that might just eliminate that, unless it's a safety thing, but
Yeah.
kids are lower to the ground anyway.
yeah. I mean, their joints are so malleable anyway that they're fine. They're not like us. They don't have all our drama and popping and cracking that we do. Laura, I think you had your hand up.
Oh, I would not touch a child. I mean, because you don't know what kind of environment they're from. And if something is, if something is happening in their home that is not proper, and you go to touch them, they may interpret how you're touching them as improper and think that you just did to them what. is
Yeah.
happening elsewhere.
Well, and I think what's hard is it'll likely be counseling groups anyway, because I'm trained as a counselor,
Yeah.
so like, it's all real gray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, step one, permission slip.
Yeah, I would, lots of waivers and things. All of that. Again, safety first, you first, keep you safe first. So whatever that looks like for you. Okay. Okay, all right, so great. So that one we've got. So let's look at on page 2 here. Just this is basically going to be, we'll go over just some stances. This is in keeping you safe. So just so you know that what kind of stance is probably the safest? What would you think for you when you're assisting somebody?
Feet wide, like stable base.
Stable base, yeah, feet wide, a squat, bent knees, Utkatasana with feet hip width distance is a good one, like that is always going to be like, because if you do, for example, like if someone's in Utkatasana and you go to assist them and you're standing with like straight legs, feet together, and they start to fall, well, you're falling too. You can't catch them. So you want a stance that's always going to be nice and like you're ready for action at any time. Like you can get them stable and you stable at all times because you are the driver in that. So you want to be able to hold firm with your stance when you do get in there. And that means like if you're lunging, then you got to be careful. If you're squatting, be careful. The one that I see the biggest assist where I'll see people not be good about their posture is if they're like, say someone's down here. I'm just doing this so they can see, and you come into a halfway lift kind of thing, and you're doing something like this. So my low back is taking all of this, or if you pull and you're in this kind of thing, your low back can get hurt. So you want to be long spine, get down low, like get down there. So you are protecting your back. Your spine is like the thing that can really get hurt with assisting. So be extra mindful of that. And so obviously height is going to matter too. So those of you that are taller, you've really got to get down low. You might even kneel, like all of those things can happen. Those of you that are vertically challenged, you can stand on props, you can stand on blocks, use props if you need to. And there will, you can also there will be some assist. You're like, I just can't do based on my height, whether it's too short or tall or whatever in between, that just doesn't feel good. And that's okay. You can always adapt. You can always find a way. But yeah, you can, Amanda Espinel always she'd stand on blocks all the time. She's not even that short, but she would do that, so yeah. Let's see. So yeah, perfect. I'm just looking at this list if there's anything else. So we're going to go over verbal cues, directive cues, and demonstratives. That's what we're going to do in groups here teaching. feel like we've covered all of these things. Are any questions about anything on this list, that 1 to 7? I think we've kind of hit all of those.
Wait, what is, horse is,
Goddess pose. Mhm.
well, I'm looking at number 3.
Yeah. So-
Where, like, some of them look like they're poses, but then others of
They're
them
not.
look like
They're-
they're meant to cue you into how to be in relation to their body.
Yep. So Tadasana, you could just be standing in mountain pose, like
In front
that's
of them.
right in front of them or to the side or to the back of them.
Okay,
Or the marriage is the one where you are, so a bit, the easiest one to describe that is like revolve crescent lunge. You are
Mhm.
with them from the beginning of the
Mm.
pose till the end.
right.
Yeah, you stay with them the whole time. Horse, it's goddess pose. The tango is basically this. You come down on one knee. And so say they're in like warrior 2 right here in front of me. And I'm like, sorry, I'm trying to bend knee. So I'm down here so that I can like, it's like the tango, like there's a flat rose in my teeth and you're working this. So you're in like and that's just what one of our teachers long ago called it the tango position. But it's kneeling. It's a one knee down sort of thing, or just straight up kneeling. Catcher stance, we all know what that is. Seated, right? So you can get down low, you can get up top, like you can do all that, but just keep yourself safe. Whatever you choose, please just keep yourself safe. That's the biggest thing.
Are we gonna go through examples of when you might use those different postures
I mean,
with poses?
not necessarily, because without actually doing the assist, it's kind of, we'll do it a little as we kind of move around. There's an activity we'll do that'll kind of, I think you'll naturally figure it out. It'll come naturally
And
to
then
you.
just save the rest for the workshop day. when that
The
happens.
rest when that
Okay.
happens, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I can't wait for that day. We're gonna have to in the summer when we can be in a park and have all the space. Let's see. Oh, I would just say number 7, that last one is when you're learning, like, don't experiment on your students. Make sure you practice with like a peer or a friend or someone that because you don't want to hurt anybody. That's the other thing is like, you got to be really clear on your pressure. What I would say in general, the feedback you will get from pressure is it's not enough. Unless you are a massage therapist or someone who does manual manipulation in some form or fashion. Otherwise, most people, when asked like, how is that pressure? The response is usually not enough. You need to get more pressure. So just know that. So if you do practice with someone that you can be touching, like ask them, is this enough? And you'll probably be surprised. You'll be like, oh, I thought this was like a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. And they're like, that's like a 3. And you're like, oh. Which is why the little drive-by ones where you're like, that did nothing for me. Like you gotta be willing to get in there with it. Okay. Let's see. Let's look at here. So this one, the next here where it's keeping in mind. So adjusting first, we talked about obviously safety, keeping that in mind. Staying with assist is just going to depend on like really the kind of assist you're doing and what you're trying to do with them. So some could be, you could stay the whole time. Some might just be a quick little, like, I just need the shoulders to drop. I'm doing this and then I'm walking away. It really can depend. Talked about if they resist, you can encourage them to breathe. And if then they still resist and nothing is happening, you walk away. And then we talked about how often, you just don't want to feel like people are picked on, especially new people. It is interesting when you have a smaller class and you're just like, this is where it's good to ask, like, if you have like, say a class of like 4 or 6 and you're like, you can always say beforehand, do you like assist? Do you, like find out, because people will be like, great, assist me. Yeah, give me all of the assists, because you just don't want to feel like, am I bugging you? Like, because some people will be like, yeah, or they'll be like, yeah, not today, I'm fine, whatever. And that's okay. How to teach and assist at the same time. This is a skill set that I know it's one more thing, right? We talked with props the other night. We're like, oh, it's one thing. And then like assist. It's practice. It's practice. It's one of those things. And it's, we had back in the day, having adjusting internships was really helpful for people that are kind of like, I'm uncomfortable, I'm not sure. So you would come in and you would assist and you get feedback from the students. The teacher would keep an eye on you to make sure you're doing okay, so that you get to kind of learn and listen to it and see what the teacher is doing, but then you also get to focus on just one thing at a time. So it's one of those things that you can do in stages. Mhm.
Would that ever be offered through Cambio, even when assists come back, or is that?
Yeah, when Assist comes back, I think it will. I mean, it was a really great program. People loved it. I mean, I had my Amanda Espinal, if those of you who remember her from teaching, she adjusted my class for like 3 years. She just kept on doing it. After her internship ended, she just kept on doing it. And it was like the funnest we had. And it was great because it helped me because that class was like unruly and would have like new people, and it was always like a mix. So she would always like, why this can be helpful is to have someone is like, if you have a bunch of new people in class, like they can help, they can go to those new people and help them when you're teaching. And that is such a gift as a teacher to have someone help you, which also it goes to like, try to put the new people together a little bit, let them kind of be in the same space in the room. Yeah. Perhaps we talked about that, keep yourself safe. I will just say, so when you ask the room, so there are some people who do believe that like with assists of having people have to opt out can make people feel uncomfortable. So there are other ways you can do that. Some people have done coins where you like flip a coin, like you have that on your mat that just says assist today or not, like your choice. Then there is that fear that someone can see it. I don't know. So you'd have to decide, but every studio is different how they do that. I have had some people who maybe teach, they know they have a smaller class. So they do say, if you want assist, then you have to opt in. So then it just puts it on those people to say, yes, I want it. I will say if you're teaching a big class, that is like, don't do that to yourself, because then you'll be like, oh no, that's hard. If you have 40 people and 35 of them raise their hand and you have to find the 5 that don't want it, you'd be like, oh God, like, I don't know. That would be hard to figure out. But you decide how you want to do for that, if and when you get to do that at some point along your journey. Okay. All right, next little page, last page here of this, and then we'll take a break, and then you'll get to practice doing some fun things. I think they're fun. Okay, so bigger picture. Where do we start? From the ground up. Yes. We talked about this one, right? That it's just like you offer it, they don't have to take it, and that's totally fine. If they're not the number 3, this is you try to match their breath as best that you can, but and if you find they're not responding or they maybe don't understand, sometimes that's it. They don't understand. So you breathe. So you just say, okay, everybody take a big breath in, big breath out, and then you can go, and then you can sync your breath with theirs. And that's like a nice little trick. If you're like, hello, are you in there? And then if you're like, nope, you're not, okay, then you just walk away. I mean, it happens. It's fascinating. You're like the Tin Man sometimes with people where you're like, how? Okay.
You are not a meat sack.
You're a jerky sack right now. I don't understand. Oh, that joke's going too far. So sorry. Okay. Number 4. So yeah, how do you know if it's too much? If you push too much. They say, ow, they stop breathing. What? Their body, they might like do this, right? This can happen. Yeah. You'll probably be pretty clear. But that's where you got to pay attention. If you want to really pay attention to that. Number 5, I feel like I keep driving that one in, being really mindful. What do you do if you feel unsafe in an assist? If you've gone in and you don't feel safe, what would you do? Back out? Calmly, thank you. Yeah. Like the same way you come in. Okay. Float on back. Get on out of here. Yes. Yep. Again, never forcing. Let's see. Yeah. Number 8, you nailed these earlier. Safety again, and then the feedback. Yeah. Asking. what I'll say is that the next page is just on, so you can fill that out later for yourself if you so want to. Once after today, once we've done all this stuff, is just sort of like, you can use it as a tool of reflection for yourself. And then there are resources there. There are great yoga books. Those are some really good ones. I would say that first one is one of my favorites. And so is number 3, of course, another Mark Stevens one, because he's written so many. He did your teaching yoga book, that book club one. He did that. His book is really good as well. So if you do want to like get them, they're good. And I like Stephanie's, that first one, her book, because she really breaks it down really simply. And then she does a lot of arrows in it. So it's like understanding the energetics of what way do you want the energy to move in the assist. And I think that's really nice. I think that's helpful when you're trying to figure it out. And so especially if you do take it upon yourself to kind of try to figure it out a little bit on your own, those are 2 really good resources if you want books like that for yourself. Okay. All right, friends, let's take a break. Okay, let's all go to the bathroom, stand up, get some sunshine on your face, whatever you need to. We'll come back, and what we'll do, just so you know, is that we're going to practice teach in a specific way. So you'll still be teaching. You're not going to teach anything new necessarily, but it's going to be with how can I assist this person with my words. Yay. Okay, let's take, I don't know, 6. Let's take 6. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Okay, what we're gonna do now, so we'll break up in, how many in the room today? Anyone counted? You know the number. You know how I am with numbers. Don't make me count.
Everybody get the same number?
Red and odd. Okay, great, no problem. So we'll have one group of 3. We'll partner up. We could do groups of 3, and then what does that make it? One group of 4, which that would be fine too. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes in a second. So what we'll do is this first one is, this is going to be where you all are gonna, what we're training this for this part here is for you to start to teach to what you see in your students' bodies. So now you've been memorizing cues, right? You've been like, okay, I gotta get the sequence down, I gotta memorize these cues. But now I'm gonna challenge your brains a little bit to cue what you're seeing. And what that means, so is that for a student, what I want you to do is to try to do on purpose commonly misaligned positions. And then so that you as a teacher will see that, and then you will give them the cue that will specifically correct it. And what that also means is that you as a student, like when you do the pose perfectly, you're doing your fellow teachers, your little Sangha, you're doing them no favors. So don't jump ahead and do what you know they want you to do. Do only what they say, okay? And I would say moving forward in posture clinics or when you're practice teaching, only do what they say. Don't do what you know they want to do. Even though you know the sequence, like trust me, make them struggle a little bit to get the words out. It'll benefit you all so much more versus, because the reality is when you get into a classroom and if you've got brand new people, they're not going to know. And then for those of you that have practiced taught at home, maybe with someone who doesn't do yoga, you experience this, right? You know that you're like, oh, well, it's so easy at posture clinic. It's like, yeah, because you all are like kind of cheating for each other. So you're not going to do that today. Okay. So this is where you'll take your time. They're not going to be poses that, you can hold them for a little while if need be. Okay. So what we'll do is, so for example, we'll start with Bryce, since you're right there. Do you mind demoing something so that they can see you on that camera right there? So come up to standing, and these are the poses. So everyone just write down halfway lift and warrior 2. And then the third one is going to be a pose. So turn to the side, please, so that they can see you on the camera.
What did you just say?
Halfway lift, warrior 2, and pose of choice. Okay, so come down into a forward fold. And the reason I'm doing these are because these are going to be pretty common misaligned poses that you'll see right off the bat. So come into a weird halfway lift, please. If you can, if you can, if you can. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I'm watching him and I'm saying, I'm gonna say to him, okay, bend your knees a little bit more. And then reach your collarbones forward. Yeah, sit your butt back a little bit more and try to lengthen your spine even more. Bring your hands to your shins. To your shins. Yeah, and then feel your shoulders relax a little bit. Lengthen your spine. Good. Lean into your toes a little bit more. Good. And now exhale for a fold. Come back down. So he's only doing what I'm saying, and I'm just giving specific cues for him. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Bryce. So same goes, will you do a quick warrior 2 for me? So what would be some common things you would see? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So where do we want to start? Look at the feet. His feet are okay, but that knee, right? So press your right knee out away from you a little bit. Good. And now let your shoulders stack over your hips. Yeah. Good. And then bring some energy into your fingers. Get your hands active. Now relax your shoulders and then sit down a little bit deeper into the lunge. Good. Nice. Perfect. Great. So does this make you nervous? You're like, I've only been doing lift up. And so now I want you to just teach to what you see. Okay. So this first one is going to give you this opportunity to just look at their body. And this is where if you've got 3 of you, so 1 of you will be teacher, 2 of you can be student, so you can get a chance to just like everybody do something weird that you can hold. Don't hurt yourself. Please don't hurt yourself, but just do something kind of funky. I will say, friends at home, there's something about when we did this on Zoom before, because this is obviously when it was all on Zoom, we were doing this, and this is one of the upsides of Zoom, because you can really focus on your person. You're just like, I'm looking at my person in the rectangle and I can really just like see what's happening. So for those of you at home, when I split you up out into your group, which I think I'm gonna do just your group of 3 here, make sure you set your camera up so they can see you. So you're gonna have to adjust. So we'll give you a few minutes to make that happen, okay? Okay.
I have a question, because the people I practice with are on Zoom.
Oh,
So for the camera angle, do you want them face onto the camera? Do you want them sideways to the camera, diagonal, like, so that you can really pay attention to knees and hips
Well,
and
what do you
elbows
think?
and back?
what would you do?
I've had people shift midway.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're the teacher, you tell them how you want them to set up.
okay, but I'm asking experience. So,
But what would make most sense?
I think it depends on the pose.
yeah.
There we go. Yep. So it depends on the pose. So you will say, if they're doing the halfway lift, how do you want them to be on their sideways? If they're doing warrior 2, how do you want them to be? Sideways. Mhm. And then whatever other pose. you-
Diagonal.
You would want both on warrior 2, because it's hard to tell if you're just tracking in and out.
You can see it. If
Yeah.
it's at the side angle, you can see, you'll see it dip in. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and that's where, yeah, tell them, I mean, you're not teaching a class per se, so just say, okay, can you turn on your mat like this? So, yeah. So there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So and that, and if you're teaching, we'll get into like a little bit more specifics with Zoom, but you just want to do it at home. Tell them where you want them to be
Okay.
facing. Okay. Okay. So let's take, for that to do 3 poses. It shouldn't take you long, right? That didn't take very long to do that. Give each other some feedback of like how it goes and then switch. So you get to do halfway lift, warrior 2, and then your pose of choice, whatever, pick anything else you want to do. Maybe don't do crow because that's not nice. Like unless somebody really wants to be in a crow pose, I guess go for it. But let's take, I think we should be able to get that done in about 8 minutes. So if you need more time, let me know. But if you get done earlier, then we'll come back. Okay.
And
Okay.
each of us teaches all 3.
Mhm. Each of you teach all 3. Mhm. Okay, I'll set up breakout room.
Yeah, sure. Are we doing 4?
Kelsey. Okay, how friends at home, how'd that go? As I wrangle cats in here.
It was interesting. It was harder. I think like just trying, like Zoom is helpful, but at the same time, it's just really hard sometimes unless you're really over like doing it really wrong. It's kind of hard to see subtle things. Like if somebody's knee wasn't quite in line, I wouldn't be able to tell really. But I think in general, most of that, like it would just depend on the experience. You would just have to rely on experience to an extent a little bit, I think. But otherwise, it was interesting. It was harder than I was expecting.
What else? What else did y'all notice?
Sometimes clothing can get in the way of your view.
Yeah.
I noticed that. Like I tried tying my shirt.
Hey, everybody, hey.
So,
No, you, thank you. You're
Oh.
them to shush in here, so.
yeah, shush, I'm talking. No,
Come on,
just kidding.
knocking.
No, but clothing, like loose clothing, it's very hard to see people's form. So, if I saw that in class, I would want to encourage that the next time they wear something a little bit more fitting to get more out of the class.
Yeah, you can, yeah, and definitely.
How do you say that to somebody, especially someone that you aren't familiar with?
I was thinking the same
But
thing.
you've noticed that they've been in class a few times and you wear.
Well, if you see them in person, you can kind of see it. You'll probably be able to see it better. But if you're teaching on Zoom, you could always tell people like, hey, one way for me to be able to help give you specific cues is if you wear stuff that's a little bit either lighter colors or, something a little less loose.
Or when Monica said, she was just like, I can't really see you. And then I was like, oh, okay, let me take my sweatshirt off. So
Yeah.
subtle.
Yeah, and you can just say, yeah, I can't see you. And then their choice, it's kind of like their choice. It's like, they can be like, too bad, so sad, you can't see me. Or, okay, let me adjust my clothes, they'll let you know. Yeah. How'd it go in here? Yeah, is it hard?
Yes.
It's challenging to get it out quickly.
Mhm.
And proper.
Laura, go ahead
No, so it was funny. 'Cause I was
and say it loudly. So they
Okay. No, it was really good because I did the scan, and so I'm giving cues, and Anastasia would not move, and I'm like, finally, I was like, Anastasia, lift your head, like I just told her.
Yeah.
And then she said, well, I didn't hear you tell me to bend my knee. And so it was a good reminder that even if you did an initial scan, if the student still didn't move, to do the scan again.
Yeah.
So that was great.
You can repeat it.
Like
Yeah.
I did follow everything on top what she said. It didn't change because my knees were still straight.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So then she said bend your knee and then it kind of went what she
It's like,
wanted.
Yeah.
it's kind of domino effect.
Uh-huh.
So,
And some people, you've got to tell them everything. Some
Yeah.
people, you just can do like one or two things and then it starts to shift. But this is what, so the reason I'm doing this is because this is when teaching is fun.
Yeah.
Because then now you're teaching what you're seeing in their bodies. And it's like, oh, okay. Like this is when it gets so much, this is why teaching can't be boring when you're teaching asana, because every body is so different and your cues do not have to be the same. I mean, yes, there are some that you'll say all the time. You're just always going to say them because they work. But then those fine tuning cues are just like so fun.
It felt like a connection, and like I particularly noticed in Megan's voice, it was like the way she was talking, it was like she was looking and paying, and it felt like she was really paying attention. And that was just really cool to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does, right? Okay. So what we're going to do for this next one, this next one will involve demoing. So I want to be very clear when I say this, I do not mean demo the class for your students. You're not demoing the class. You are demoing specific moments, specific poses that are going to help be a good teaching tool for your students in a way that and this is where this can be involved, like the self-assist, you can use that, and a physical demo. Okay, so what I mean, for example, is let me adjust this so you can see at home. So we'll pretend that everyone is in warrior 2, and you're all facing me this way. So we'll just pretend I'm standing, I'm facing, I'm gonna come into warrior 2 here. My left leg is forward. So that would mean everybody over here would be right leg forward and facing me, okay? So this is where you will have with them where you might have, say, a few of the people are doing this sort of weird thing that's happening, right? Where you're like, oh boy. So I will say, okay, everyone come on up. Let's everyone stand up, straighten your legs, turn your right foot forward, start to lunge into this knee, press your knee out away from you, give it a little press. Engage down through this back leg. Like I'm gonna point, I'm gonna do lots of directional pointing. I'm touching myself. I'm gonna say hands to hips and then bring shoulders, sorry, at home, I can't see that. If they're doing this, I'll be like, okay, now bring your shoulders to stack over your hips. So shoulders and hips are stacked. Shoulders and hips I'm saying what I'm doing. Some people are visual learners, some people are kinesthetic. So we want to give them some options. Then your arms up there kind of like this and be like, now lift your arms and extend, really stretch them out. Okay, so you're kind of demoing what you want them to do. Okay, so for example, let's have, will you, Bryce, will you come up and do warrior 2 for me? And do it so they can see, like face that camera. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm gonna pretend like I'm mirroring him. So I'm just gonna, so for people at home say, and do something weird. Let's do something weird.
Or just,
Whatever.
okay.
Weirder.
Weirder. Weirder. I don't know.
Straighten your front line.
There,
My
okay.
alignment's too
Great.
perfect, I can't really do
Okay,
it.
so now what I would do is I would typically be right here. I would come up and I would, so just pretend that that's where I am. So, for camera's sake. So pretend that I'm just standing right there in front of him and I'm gonna say, okay, Bryce, bring your hands down to your hips for a second. Good. Now look down. Can you press your right knee out to the right just a little bit? Good. And now straighten your back leg a little bit more. Good. And now look forward. Look at me here. Pretend like you're laying straight out. And then let your shoulders come and stack right over your hips. Good. Now lift your arms out and then extend them out. Arms are straight and you're doing your hands. Good. Great. Great. Stay here. Stay here 3 more breaths. I'm gonna get up. I'm gonna walk around. Good. And then they'll release and come on out of it. So you're giving specifics. And you can do it where you speak specifically to one person, or you can do it kind of a general thing that you might be seeing in the room. So you can kind of play around with that. So you demo. So poses that I want us to do that would be warrior 2, because that's a really common one that you'll see, especially if the brand new person comes over to the corner in front of the room and they're up here in warrior 2 and they're like, warrior 2. Trying to see, because they don't know. So then I would come over here and I'd show them what they need to do. So you can do it that way, or just in general, be like, you're speaking to everyone who's in the room of like, okay, we're here in goddess, knees back, knees and toes, point, like, I'm like a flight attendant, right? We're like, everything is point. We're pointing and we're demoing. Okay, so I want us to do warrior 2 and halfway lift again, because halfway lift, even though you give all those cues, what can happen is it still may not resonate. So you may need to go next to the person and stand and be like, okay, follow me. Just relax down, bring your hands to your shins. Now lift up. Now see how my spine is lengthening. See how I'm squeezing right here. Like you show them on your body, and that might be the thing that clicks. That's usually the pose that you can say all those verbal cues and they're still just like this. You're like, okay, well, take a peek at me. Take a peek at me and let me show you how to do this one.
But that one you want to be beside them.
Yep. So then you want to be right next to them. So you got to think about what is going to be most advantageous for the student to be able to see. The halfway lift is going to be very kind of specific to 1 or 2 people. Also why it's nice if you have your newbies all in one spot. Because say that you 2 were new, I could just come right over. Hang on, so they know what I'm talking about. So if you 2 are brand new and you're halfway lifts, we're both doing that weird thing. I come right here and be like, okay, well, take a look at me. Lift up, shoulders back, one engages, move forward. I can get both of you at the same time and help with that. Okay. Yeah. And then let's just do those 2. That's good. Let's just do the two. And so you're gonna have to move yourself. So that means the front of the room kind of shifts depending on the person and where you are. So it's no more just standing in one spot, frozen. You're gonna get up and move around your people a little bit. Okay? Okay. So yeah, and then we'll do something else. Okay, great. So we'll do one other one and then another one. So we've got all sorts of fun activities. Okay, so choose that halfway lift and warrior two. And then friends at home, I'm gonna break you up into two groups now. Okay. Okay, how'd that go? All right, doing some demoing, yeah?
Still challenging.
Still challenging, I know, it's still challenging, right? Okay, what we're gonna do now, we're gonna pause for just we'll finish the day with going back to that and teaching, and we'll kind of put a bunch of this together. But I want us to just pause real quick, and we're gonna talk a little bit about actually teaching online and what that looks like, of just like some of the things to keep in mind when you do. I just want to make sure we get enough time to get this in, and then the rest of the time today will be practice teaching, and we'll put some elements together that I think will be fun for you all to like let this all like sink in. Okay, so have you all taken class online before?
Yes.
You haven't, Will? Ooh, you're such a rebel. Bill doesn't want to.
They're good when you still want to get a practice in, but it's like, I don't have time for the commute.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Great for COVID. So how did it, what worked for you when you were practicing? Go back to, maybe you still are, maybe you are still taking classes online. Let's all educate Will on what that, yes.
So my experience with doing classes online was actually like from YouTube. So I wouldn't do like a Zoom as much as I would do YouTube, and I found it super helpful to have like the teacher. This is like entirely different from Zoom. So I guess it's
Yeah, I've done
makes
YouTube
sense.
classes, I just haven't taken
Mhm.
a live.
Yeah.
YouTube I like because they do the class with you. So even though I'm alone in my house, I still have a reference point of how it
Mhm.
should feel in my body.
Yeah.
So I really like it like that.
That's where I'll say that like the classroom, like taking classes in a classroom, or sorry, taking class from like Zoom, if it was live, still having bodies to watch is important. So that is like, if you are teaching from home, if you can, I would recommend have a body that so people can reference. That is so helpful so that you don't have to do the class yourself. Because that's a lot. That's a lot. A friend of mine in California who, because their lockdown was even like worse than ours. She had to because her body was just like, she's like, my body's breaking down. Like, I cannot do this. And so she was having friends that were in her bubble come and she would teach to them because she's like, I can't do this. And it's a lot on your bodies to do that. So if you can have somebody there, and that's why like here at the studio when we're teaching, we turn the cameras so that people at home, if they need a body for reference, they have a body for reference.
I will say that it's hard with the distance to see more than like the gross movements, right? The biggest movements. If there's like small things, I'm still listening to cues or need like the teacher's closer angle. So it's still challenging. There's not gonna be a perfect.
No, I know, unfortunately. Yeah. But those are things to keep in mind. Like, can they see what's happening? So you want to, when you're with the camera, like move it, like, I just moved it so that we could all see it, like, so that they can see, like, like this is okay to move your camera around as you're teaching. It may seem maybe obvious, but people don't. I've taken some classes where the camera's like this the whole time. And you're like, okay, well, good thing you're clear and I know what yoga is, but like you, I mean, it's happened. Like, I have to state the obvious. Oh no, someone just signed into, This is hilarious, you all. So this is what just happened on my laptop. It says you have been signed out because your account was signed in from another device. That's weird. Someone just kicked me out.
Technology.
Yeah, you're still.
Still up there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming. Yeah, but
Are there other people up there still?
no.
Or is it just you?
Or is it just the view?
Like
Is it just on
sideways?
speaker view?
What is happening? Hang on.
Yeah.
This is kind of ironic.
Yeah.
So when
Okay.
teaching
Things that
online-
can go wrong while teaching online.
Okay, it's not.
Thank you for stating the obvious.
This is weird. It will not let me start.
I'm
No,
like,
you don't.
honestly, this sounds like an account issue, like someone else.
Get in there,
Yeah.
Bryce.
See, Bryce, look. Can someone text the, does anyone
I'm not.
have? See, look, it won't,
I'm not today because I didn't.
'Cause
plug
it should
my
just say
batteries in
start.
yet.
Yeah,
We should
Text to
try.
can you go to the,
See if they're there.
let me-
See who's in the class.
Oh,
and-
sign into the Zoom.
Yeah.
Our
okay, I'm gonna start it
intensive,
here.
so I can
This
see
is
Zoom and see
so
who's on there.
weird.
And just let them know. Find the child.
okay, now we have,
Take your house.
but it's like still,
Oh,
Wait,
You're still on.
oh my gosh, that was hilarious. Okay,
Oh,
well,
wait, now it's all back up and running.
now it's all back up and running. Okay, great, good. So that was perfect for everyone at home. Sorry, or if you heard me that whole time. Yeah, so that can happen. What can also happen is I was teaching a class and it's still recording. Awesome. Okay, good. I was teaching this class that at home, and I had to practice it. It was one of those, I didn't have anyone to do it for me, to like be the body. And I went like this and my laptop just flew, closed perfectly. And I was like, oh shit. And it wasn't a Cambio class. It was a totally different, like a special event thing. And I was just like, take a deep breath, pick it up, got back in. I'm all, hey, I'm back. And again, like stating the obvious. You just got to acknowledge, like when the technology does weird things, that you just like roll with it. You know, we had our cat one time. Oh wait, it's doing the thing. Our cat decided to do right when Austin was teaching Ohm in the beginning of class, because our cat would like walk around and be there with us, and I was practicing. I'm just sitting there, and Austin's like, "Okay, let's Ohm." And right before he Ohm, she just goes, "Meow." And like he and I are just like trying not to die, and like it is the funniest. We're just like, okay, and Sophie's Ohming with us all now too, everyone. So, you know, and those little fun things that can happen all on Zoom, and you just kind of roll with it. But so that couldn't be more perfect. Okay, things though to keep in mind. So if you do have like a couple devices, that can always be great for Zoom. Moving the camera around. I will say, so how we do it here is we have a mic that we use, as you all know, which is super helpful, right? Walking around. The way though, unfortunately, that if the mic is plugged in here, then we can't hear them. So that's where it doesn't, I don't know why, I'm not tech savvy enough in that way to figure out why that we can't have them talk at the same time. But at least then everyone can hear, depending on where you're walking around the room, that they can always hear you. And that's really nice. Adjusting this, you want to be careful too, just when you're walking around, like don't stick your boobs in the frame all the time. Like, you gotta, like, cause you know, the height of that can depend. And so being really mindful of just your body as you're moving around. And acknowledge the people online. So I love that. I love to like come over. I like lean. If you've taken my class, I know you've seen me do it. Either you've taken it online or you see, I walk over, I'm like, and I'm not always peeking my head in. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not, but I'm like looking and I'll be like, oh, nice, Kelsey. Yeah, great, good, you're doing great. Like, or Kelsey, drop your right shoulder a little bit, you know, like whatever. Like I acknowledge them, I keep them part of the process so that they know that it doesn't matter if they're at home. And I even will say even friends at home, like I just acknowledge, because there are people that take the stuff that's recorded, they're taking stuff later. And if I know, like I've had friends that they'll like send me a text, they'll be like, oh, I took your class the other night, like that was hilarious, that little thing. And so then I'm like, oh, Katie likes to take this class. And now I'll be like, Katie, hey, you know, like I just I'll like shout her out during class. Let's see, tips for teach out on Zoom. Well, it'll be just like your posture clinic, basically, kind of a thing. So you'll partner up with someone. And so just make sure your space is clear, that you all have a clear space so that you can see one another and teach to them. I would, yeah, so that's really it. So you'll be fine. As long as you can see each other, you're good to go. Yeah, for teaching, those of you teaching on Zoom.
One thing I found is when you come into a yoga studio, it's a hard floor, everything's kind of set up, but when somebody's at home, to ask them what their space is like, or even tell them in advance, like, hey, these are some good things to have, or move to a space that's like this.
Yeah.
Because they're just in their home and they're like, oh, throw it out, but it's so different.
Yeah, so that's where if you are like a Zoom specific, you can say like in your email or your class description to them or whatever, to be like, hey, some tips to make this more successful for you. You can tell them to, you know, clear the clutter out of the space, like have a room that will be uninterrupted. You know, if you have a mirror, great, or have it like, if you are comfortable having your camera on, that really helps me as a teacher, because then I can see you and then I can teach to you, because you will teach classes. I mean, I taught classes this last week where for a friend of mine, her company, they did a big global thing and I was teaching a vinyasa class. Everybody's camera is blacked out. So you're just like, okay, I'm just going to trust my timing, and you just roll with it. So, but you ask people, ask them to, like, you know, before a class, when you're talking to them, to be like, hey, you know, let me see your setup. Ask them like, let me see your setup so I can see you during class, because I will be able to like teach a little bit more specifically to you. Like, it's okay to ask people for that. You know, and again, it's their choice. You know, obviously, like with Cambio people, we don't, you know, I'll sometimes mention like, hey, if you want your camera on, great, I'd love to be able to see you, but if not, that's totally fine. And I'm not going to care if someone comes with their camera off. Like, do what you need to, you know. You know, I know, like, because Amber, like, she's taking class all the time, but her camera is always off. And it's like, because she's crying. She's like, she doesn't want it. She doesn't need to, you know, we don't need to. I wouldn't want that if I were just crying and like, just let me have my cry and let me do my yoga, you know, like, and that's okay, you know, so we just let people do that. I would say like music. So a lot of you may know from that have like Spotify is always great, but whatever. I always post the link for my Spotify, my class in there. So it's super easy. You just copy the link, post it in the chat. And then I copy the link again. I select, once it's in the chat, I copy it again, because people don't have that link until they've actually, like that chat, they can't see, right? Everybody has to be in the room first in order to see. You all know that, right? With Zoom, that whole thing. Okay. So then I just have it copied and ready to go. So then all I have to do is click on the chat and then I paste again and it's good to go. And then it's in there, and you know, people can use music or not. You may need to, if they don't know, if they are new to like doing music with class on their device, if they're using Spotify, on Spotify, they can adjust the volume. So they can turn it down, because if they're like, I tried it, but it's too loud, like let them know, turn the volume down on Spotify so that your voice is louder than the music. Okay. This is all stuff we learned during, because it's not anything I knew before. Let's see, demoing to them. And now it's like set up. This is where mirroring can be really helpful. And now with Zoom, it's like sometimes mirroring is already set up on the screen. So that's kind of tricky. That's sort of a tricky thing with mirroring. It's like, how do they have their screen set up? And some people, they're just like, I don't know, I'm on Zoom, don't ask me those questions. So don't worry too much about that. But you can kind of play around with that to just see how that feels for you. demoing, or having students in who are practicing being demos. You know, that's always a great option to have them be like, yeah. of course. Mhm.
In general, unless you've turned mirroring off, every video thing will mirror when it displays you to yourself and not mirror when it displays you to other.
Okay, say that again.
So,
slower.
so in general, like right now, it's showing you, unless you've turned it off, your mirror image, but it's showing everyone online your normal image. You don't look like you're being mirrored right
Oh,
now. If you turn mirroring off, that only adjusts it for you. I don't think any of the video platforms actually mirror your image out to people. It's just adjusting whether you see yourself as mirrored or not.
oh, because like we've had it before, like when we did this on Zoom and we were having everyone mirror, it didn't do it. Like some people were like, does it look like you're mirroring me? And they're like, no, it doesn't. Like it was very weird. And then we were like, I was like, I don't know then what to tell you. Because if you're teaching like online, typically like to a camera, you want to mirror. You want to
Yeah.
mirror so that, you know, like if you're taking like a YouTube class, the teacher, depending how the angle of the camera is, they're going to be doing the opposite leg than what you're doing.
Interesting.
I know, I don't know.
Usually the way they want you to feel comfortable, and what they found through studies is that we are used to looking at ourselves in the mirror, which is why mirroring is the default, but that other people either don't notice or actually it looks weird to them if they see our mirror image. And so that's why
I'm like, my mind
you,
is
it
like,
shows your mirror image, and to them it shows what your not mirror
normal.
image, because
Wow.
that's how we're used to seeing each other and ourselves.
Wait, so on your laptop, are you seeing yourself mirrored? in your
I
new
guess,
one?
because
You
here's
look-
my left hand on my face and I see, and it's
on the
like,
left
but it's on
side.
the left side. It's on the left
on
Yeah,
side.
here
so
it's
on that one, it's the same as you in real
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
This
This is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is it?
It looks like we copy and pasted you just straight over something.
I'm just having a moment. What was happening? Oh my gosh, okay. That like hurts my brain. I don't know why. Thank you, Bryce, for
Yeah.
explaining that. I'm gonna have you come to this lecture every time now and
Yeah.
talk about. Just kidding. Okay. All right. So keeping in mind, like, don't do all the class if you can help it. Have somebody to help you. I would say when you are teaching like in a room like this, the volume of your music, just be mindful of that so that, because coming through, they will still come through the microphone some. And so it can sound really distorted to the person practicing at home. As you all know, if you've done it, you've probably been in some of those classes where you're like, oh, that's just kind of weird. So just be mindful of that. And taking your class online is one of the best gifts that you can have for true, honest feedback. So I often tell people, record yourself, just like voice memo yourself and take your class. But even if you do something like this, like, you know, if you teach a full on Zoom class, like record it, because you can go in and get feedback. You'll see like, oh, that's weird. Like, why do I stand like that in the room? Or why did I say that? That rhythm is weird, or that timing is off. You'll get real honest feedback for yourself if you can take your class at some point in time. And using names once again, covered up. Oh yeah, that is frustrating. It's where Kayla took classes where the music covered up the instructor's voice. Yeah, you don't want that. That's where mics can be really helpful. And this is where, like, this is how we assist too. Like, we're looking in and we're looking at everybody in there, you know, and so we're giving like those cues that we just talked. So you're like looking in at them and speaking. You can speak one-on-one to them, or a class as a whole. You can still do all of those sort of things. Okay. I think do you have any other questions with Zoom? Obviously the free one, it's what, 40 minutes? Is that right? 40?
Yeah.
Yeah.
30 or 40.
Or something like that, 40 minutes. So if you have to do the paid subscription if you want more.
And it's
wanna do-
only up to 3 people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Mhm.
This is just a thing I've noticed, but so with the disclaimers,
Mhm.
I feel like it used to be really like everyone read it, and people now to varying degrees read or maybe show it up, or like, does it need to be read out loud, or could it be like a
So
text in the chat?
now it
or-
is, now we have it defaulted so that when we start class, our camera, our video is off and it's just the waiver is on the screen.
Oh, okay.
And then
so
we
that's
push
what-
record and say, by taking this class, you're acknowledging this waiver. So I make some sort of stupid joke about that every time. And
Okay.
but and that, like if you think about like a video that you would normally watch, right? It's always like there's that health disclaimer anyway, you know. So if you ever old school watched workout videos, you know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
The consultative visit, yeah, right, all that jazz. Any other questions about teaching online?
Less of a question, more of a comment. I do appreciate when teachers start, like, say, I'm starting the playlist in like 3, 2, 1.
Yeah,
And then the other thing that I have noticed is like, number one, not having the playlist on shuffle play, and number two, trying not to skip, because even if the distortion comes through the mic, if the songs are still linked, it usually is less, like it kind of falls in with
oh,
the music.
yeah,
But if they're not linked and like I've had that happen where it's like a song got skipped or something like that, and all of a sudden we're on a different song, and now I keep hearing bits and pieces of that other song and the person talking and then my music, and then it's like,
I'm so I don't skip songs in my class anymore because I was afraid that might happen. So I'm glad to know that
yes,
I
I
suffer
appreciate
through.
that.
I will always be like, I want to skip the song, but I can't because if they're listening at home, and okay, good to know. Okay, so there we go. Good. Mhm.
How do you handle like freezing or tech stuff going awry?
I mean, you just acknowledge it, right? It's like, sorry, everybody, having a technical difficulty. I mean, it's the same thing if like the music doesn't work in here or something weird happens, you acknowledge it and you just try to move on. Obviously, it depends, like if it goes off totally away, then I don't know what, you just wait till it gets fixed again. So that's where making sure you have a strong enough internet connection too. That seems obvious, but that's going to be important. Because if your Wi-Fi is weak and you're trying to do this, it's not going to work. Yeah. Okay. And always ask us too, like if you get into teaching online, like just reach out. If you're like, wait, how do I do this? Message Bryce. No, just kidding. Bryce will tell you.
Support.
Tag,
Aw.
help us.
In exchange for like doing things. It's like, I'm doing this work, you have to like give me this.
Yeah. I will say also know that like, so still saying, because everybody, if you're practicing at home, like when you say the front of the room and the back of the room, like I think people understand what you mean, but to clarify, maybe just like if you do like a mandala where you're doing that full circle, and if you're like, and now you're facing the back of the room, you can always clarify like what that back foot is that should be, like give them a little bit in case they start to get a little confused. You can always speak to that a little bit for them as well, because the front of the room is going to be different than studio versus home-ish. Yeah, top of your mat, back of your mat, that sort of thing. Yeah, just being cognizant of those. It's kind of like if you teach outside, like a yoga in the park class, like it cracks me up when teachers say, bring your hand to the floor and to the ceiling. You mean the ground and the sky? Because you're outside now. So, state the obvious once again, sort of thing. Okay, cool. So if any questions come up, just let us know. Let me and Bryce know. Bryce will answer all of those questions.
To the best of my ability.
Okay, so what we'll do this last little bit, and if you need to pee, do a quick pee, is I want us to practice teach, and we'll partner practice teach for this next one. So just pair up for this and this is literally like bringing all this together. So I want you to practice saying their name, just use their name, practice doing a little bit of demoing, a little bit of ask them to do it one pose kind of weird so that you can practice giving a little of like that verbal cueing to what you're seeing, pointing. Like for example, I would, Bryce, will you come into a lizard lunge for me? And do it too short. Do your front leg weird.
Too short in the back leg or front?
Front leg.
Front leg.
Bring
Okay.
it in towards you
So, or people will sometimes go too far, so I'll be like, "Bryce, can you walk with me?" Like directional point, like actually show him where you want to go. Okay, does that make sense? So that could be the same like warrior 2, you could be like walk your right foot, walk your foot forward more for warrior 2, but like get up and move around your person. Like you don't want to stand in the same place, like move, whether you're demoing, you're pointing, acknowledging, whatever. So just get up and like utilize the space around your student, okay? Okay, so let's if you need to run to the bathroom, do a quick bathroom break, but let's come back at 5 till. Okay, so we'll come back at 5 till, or let's do 8 till, just so that in case there are any lingering questions or anything, and then we can close with the word, okay? So just split that time up for yourself, half and half to teach, and you can teach anything you want. So if you're like, hey, I want to practice crescent lunge series, then whatever you want, but just start to incorporate some of this stuff in with each other, okay?
So maybe pick one of the series.
Questions? Questions at home, are you all clear? You're clear, okay, good. Mhm.
So.
Hang on one second, I need to do that math.
I feel the same way. So I'm sure we're all.
13 minutes.
Yoga.
Oh, yoga first. What kind of?
Okay.
So that's how I just did this. Like separated for legs.
So maybe we'll do.
The rest.
Oh, nice. Here, let me
dog.
look in my,
And then it's like.
what was
until
your,
the-
go back to the, we go back to the email.
Um,
What was the subject?
Pick a couple poses to try and.
I think-
You don't have to do that many, but just one.
document
Oh.
sequence.
When did you send it?
Yeah, so the day we spoke, like, after.
I
Okay,
didn't
let me
do
go to my
my
job.
When was it? Friday.
But I'm apparently in triangle series in my.
There we go.
But then
Went to my junk.
But that, this is like the largest document, so it's the whole.
Oh,
And
cool.
then like where one has to take a deep breath, like the.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so great.
It is separated too, so in case I wanna work today on integration, tomorrow like
Now
on the
that
A.
my brain is.
And it's until the end with all this.
Inhale, gaze forward.
Oh, that's so great.
It really helped me so much.
Yeah.
Because it was hard to look at the sequence and like sometimes I would like repeat the same with a left.
Go ahead
leg,
and lift your
would
spine up
forget, and
straighter
then
so
I
that
just
you're in
made
a
it
dorsal
longer.
position.
Perfect.
Torso,
Combine
sit
them.
back
Oh,
further
that's great.
down towards,
Good.
like you're sitting in a chair.
Okay, we'll teach.
Exhale, hands come down to the mat, forward fold. Nope.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But it's.
How are you? How'd it go? Go good? Did it go all right? Yeah? Okay.
Feel messy, but good.
Yeah, but that's
Learning
okay.
experience.
Yeah, and so, I mean, but this is like the real life of teaching. So what I will say is that obviously friends at home with Zoom, it's gonna be a little different, like when you're teaching one-on-one Zoom, but when you are in person with someone, you're not gonna stand in one spot and teach the whole time. You will be moving around the room. So you can kind of look at it as like you teach from the 6 corners of the room, the front, the back, and the 4 corners. Like you move around and like utilize that space in the room, that you're not locked, your feet aren't cemented into the floor. Use that space, use all the stuff we talked about today, like play, point, squat, get down low, whatever you need to, demo, all those sort of things with them. And it'll be fun for you because then you're like actively engaged. They'll feel like you're engaged. And it'll be a more well-rounded experience for everybody with that. And then just when you're practice teaching, please like do weird things so that they can teach to that. Okay, don't jump ahead. If they say lift your right leg up, lift your right leg up. And if they forget to tell you to lunge, don't lunge until they tell you to. Okay, just let it be awkward for a minute because that's the reality of how it's going to go with teaching. Okay, any questions before we close the word? Good. Ready? Okay. Friends at home, I'll have you go first. Kayla.
I'm gonna use the same one I did yesterday. I'm gonna say progress.
Okay, great. Monica,
Excitement.
Jasmine,
Trust.
good. Kelsey.
Sangha.
That's good.
Hungry.
Hungry.
Progress.
Say it loud. Talk loud, everybody.
Progress.
Excited.
Assist.
Evolving.
Hot chocolate.
Improvement.
Fun.
Learning,
Oh, movement.
confidence. Airport.
Be grateful.
Zoom, zoom, zoom. Zoom, zoom, zoom. All right, thanks so much, everyone. Have a great week, and I'll see you all soon, I'm sure, for something, either here or in class. Thanks, everyone.
Ready to get.
Oh my God.
Is he coming?
I think they're sending it home. I'm not sure.
Yay! So you got to talk to him.
I thought I was.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, you were, there's been more.
Ellie's in it.
Your eldest? Oh, well, you were telling me, yeah.
She had a therapy